I'm gonna let you finish. But hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the PandemFlick Vodcast, the show that takes a deep dive on a number of different films that explore the themes of pandemic or viral outbreaks. And of course, this entire show takes place during our own global pandemic during the COVID-19 outbreak. So all of your hosts on this show are coming to you from their own germ-free bunkers, hopefully. So, question mark? Did everyone use hand sanitizer before we started recording?
Oh, always.
Well, good. All right. So before we get into this episode's film, I would like to introduce you all to our hosts. We'll start with Adam Harum. Adam Harum's the man who's currently hydrating, and he is an award-winning filmmaker. He's the host of the YouTube web series Done Better. Adam, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me again, Boyd.
You're welcome. I'm in your office, so thanks for letting me record from your office.
Yeah, thankfully I wiped it all down earlier.
And I germed it all up, so good luck the next time you're in here. Our next host is Isaac Joslin. He's the man sitting next to that gigantic glass of alcohol. Isaac, along with being an individual who has explored the science of sound on film sets, he is also the host of the SacCast Movie Pod, where he dissects all kinds of films with his co-hosts and talks about what is great about them and what isn't so great. Isaac, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Finally, we have Clancy Bundy. Clancy Bundy is the glue that holds this ship afloat. Clancy.
Okay, just let him have it.
No, I like that one. Clancy is involved in both the last two projects I mentioned. He's also a very talented artist who's always posting his scribbles onto social media. You can find them on Instagram at Scribbles with Clancy. Clancy, thanks again, buddy, for being here.
Oh, hey, thank you guys for having me.
And I, of course, am Adam Boyd. I'm a professor of film at Eastern Washington University, and this is the PandemFlick Vodcast. So those of you who aren't familiar with the format of the show, every film that we talk about on the show has been selected by a member of the host panel. So tonight's film was actually a film chosen by Mr. Bundy himself. So as we dive into it, Clancy, what I'd like you to do is set up today's film and give us maybe a little bit of a plot summary and tell us your initial thoughts about it.
Alrighty. I chose the 1986 horror comedy film Night of the Creeps. I'm actually way more familiar with a movie that kind of spun off from this film called Slither by James Gunn. But I thought that that's recent enough, and James Gunn is popular currently enough that everyone's probably seen that. So I wanted to go kind of back to the source and investigate a pandemic movie that has a little more biological, a little more of a invasive invasion sort of feel to it. So, yeah. And after watching it, I myself am like, okay, I remember this film a little differently. I'd only seen it once before, and I enjoyed it. And having watching it this time, I feel like it's a fun movie, and I don't really, I don't know how it's going to fare today. But at the end of the day, I was happy to revisit it, and I think that it's a pretty fun little flick. So hopefully you all get a chance to watch it at some point in your lives, and I know that everyone else here has seen it. So, yeah.
Do you want to give us just a quick plot summary of what happens in the movie for those who haven't seen it?
Sure. There is an experimental creature or some sort of bioorganism that is released onto Earth unexpectedly in the 50s, and it takes a few decades, but it sort of reaches its apex in the 80s, in the most 80s of the 80s. And
peak 80s.
Yeah, it's the story of a community, of a college campus reacting to alien invasion infestation.
Yeah.
Excellent. I mean,
Brain
that's
slugs.
Yep.
That's it in a nutshell.
Brain slugs, yeah.
Everyone loves brain slugs. It's
Yeah.
like if they made a whole movie out of that one scene in Wrath of Khan where the bug crawls into that one dude's ear.
Yep.
Well, two dudes, including
what's-
Chekhov.
One of my favorite things about rewatching this movie is all of us have obviously engaged with them before, but a lot of aspects of this movie felt like a 48-hour film. Like the range of things, like I felt like there's almost a checklist that the writer was trying to like fit into like one script. How do I get all of these different elements to fit into one or more plot? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that was one thing I kind of enjoyed about the movie. It also has some. It's got a lot of like flavor and variety to the humor in it. So yeah. That's about all I'm gonna preface it with. You guys can take it away.
Excellent. And we'll loop back to you to get your final thoughts. Ultimately, what our goal here is with our panel of hosts is we're going to discuss the film on its general merits as a movie, but we're also going to discuss how it handles the pandemic or outbreak theme. And each host is going to finally give this film a score. It will either pass with a thumbs up, it survives the pandemic, or it's a thumbs down and it is infected. So we'll go to our first host to tear this film inside out from its brain outward. We'll go to Adam Harum. Adam, what were your thoughts on Night of the Creeps?
I actually enjoyed it a lot. It was interesting. I do remember watching this a long time ago, and then I think it was one of those movies that Isaac sometimes would play on the TV during certain things. I feel like it was in the background of a party I went to at some point. And I remember seeing the ending and being like, I need to revisit that. I remember that from when I was younger. It was really
kick-ass last scene. Like that last image is great.
That last like 20 minutes is great, and it's all very well done in building up to that. It took me a while, and it kind of cracked me up that I went in assuming it was going to be just another like 80s movie, especially once they started dealing with the drama of boyfriend and girlfriend and she's dating someone but I'm in love with her now. But it took me way too long to realize it was a deconstruction of that, which cracked me up because this is only 86 and there's so many 80s movies that take that concept dead serious, where it's like, I'm in love with that girl, but she's got a douchey boyfriend, and boy, if she could just see what a douche he was, she would hook up with me. And this movie is straight up just making fun of that. And at first, again, I was like, is every 80s movie about this plot, about the guy falling for the girl? And then I'm like, wait, no, the whole point, the creeps are the like most bro douchebag guys ever coming for dates and stuff. So I don't know why it took me so long to get there, but that's
dates with your brain.
Yeah, but the general concept is just brilliant. It is in a way like weirdly deconstructive of the genre by placing itself within it, by pointing out like, hey, in 80s movies around this time, it's about this love romance thing, but we're going to put in brain slugs and a flamethrower and then have some fun with it. On top of that, like adding in the whole cop element of like the gruff cop trying to like regain his like fix his past and have to deal with it face on kind of thing. He's a drunk and an alcoholic, and like he was played so much, like so seriously that it made it funny. And I think basically all of the things it intended to do, I think were intentional and were pulled off really well. So like its humor really worked great for me. And it's just a fun movie. It was just like a lot of fun to watch and revisit, and just embraces. It's a little silly and a little ridiculous, and it's not perfect, but it is what Clancy was saying too. Of like, oh God, I want to put in UFOs and make homage to the 50s and do like college campus stuff and brain slugs, and it just kind of all comes together in what should be a mess, but ends up being just a ton of fun. And then as far as the pandemic goes, it's a little loose on that. It's brain slugs that are transferring and going and taking over bodies and stuff. And that's the general concept. But yeah, I mean, in general, entertainment value, I loved it. So I would give it a pass for sure. I think it's worth checking out.
It survives for you.
It survives for me.
That's a big resounding thumbs up from Mr. Harris.
Yes. Yeah.
All right. We will move on to Mr. Joslin. Isaac, had you seen this film before?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
It's Night of the Creeps. It's great.
Gotcha.
5
Okay.
stars. Pass.
Great. Okay. Give us a little more.
Next host. No.
Give us a little more.
This came out of that great cycle of 80s horror comedies. And as much as a horror comedy is kind of a no-brainer, it's very seldom done well. And for whatever reason, the decade of the 80s gave us most of the best ones. It's kind of starting with American Werewolf in London. Then you had your Evil Dead 2, your Night of the Creeps, and your Brain Deads and stuff. Your early fucking Peter Jackson movies.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's delightful. Tom Atkins, who plays... I always thought that his name was Detective Miller, which is why I thought he said Miller Time at the end.
It's Miller Time, yeah.
Right.
Actually, I think that was just a hilarious joke on the obvious Miller beer product placement throughout the film. But Tom Atkins, some will know from Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, another amazing 80s horror film that isn't ostensibly a comedy, but metatextually is. I love. He always plays the same like haggard alcoholic that just gets all the ladies for some reason. Anyway,
I don't want to digress, but I had the opportunity to work briefly with Tom Atkins, and he's a very nice man. And yeah, and I had not seen this film, but I had known of Tom Atkins' sort of legendary, roles in kind of these like. Typically, it's been like sequels to horror film franchises and things, but yeah, I worked with him. He had just come off of the reboot or re-envisioning of My Bloody Valentine, and I worked with the same director who had done the 3D version of My Bloody Valentine, and he came in as this bit part to basically play the same character he is in this film. So it was a delight, and I enjoyed meeting him. He's a great guy.
But this also strikes me as one of the earlier horror movies that was made by horror movie nerds. When that became a thing, they do that thing that a lot of directors did in the later 80s, early 90s, where they name a bunch of their characters after horror directors.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's
Cronenberg.
Tom Atkins' character is Ray Cameron. There's a Detective Landis, a Sergeant Raimi. But this is a great version of it in that it doesn't call that much attention to their nerdery. And just they use their nerdery for good in that they know the cliches of the genre that they can subvert and play with and have fun with. And it's a lot of fun. You always love a movie that ends with a couple tag teaming a flamethrower to get rid of brain slugs. One thing I didn't realize, the star of the movie, Jason Lively, is one of the Lively siblings. The least attractive Lively sibling, meaning he's the brother of Robin Lively and half brother of Blake Lively.
Yeah.
Wait,
I mean,
what?
I'm a Robin Lively man myself, but
quite a bit older than Blake.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's related to Ryan Reynolds
through marriage.
Robin Lively, the teen witch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also the chick in Karate Kid 3. And that's it. That's all she'll ever be. But it's a delightful movie. I love that the frat bro douches are the most 80s frat guys in the history of the 80s.
Yeah.
They're just like lantern jawed, bleach blonde hair, gelled up to the max.
Yeah. And it strikes this tone where it's the trope is there, but then it's exaggerated just to enough to let you know that like the filmmakers are aware of the trope, and now they're twisting it just a bit. And so it's
and it was almost a little before its time because
I agree,
these tropes had only been invented like 5 years prior.
That's what I was saying. I was shocked. That's why when I first went in, I assumed they were just following the trope, not realizing until a couple scenes in, I was like, wait, no, they're very aware of this and making fun of it.
The same year this movie came out, Friday the 13th Part 6 came out. And I don't know if you guys have seen it, but Friday the 13th Part 6 is a full-on parody, a self-aware parody of horror films 10 years before Scream came out.
Right.
And suggested viewing. It's on I think it's on Amazon Prime right now. But I don't know. There was this little bubble of filmmakers that were ahead of the curve on that shit, and I don't think they get enough credit. Also, the director Fred Decker went on to do Monster Squad, which is another great 80s horror comedy. He's a collaborator with Shane Black back then, so that one of his early scripts was Monster Squad.
That probably goes a long way to explain The Predator, which, to be honest, I still haven't seen yet. Like that most recent Predator movie that came out. But that was him and Shane Black reuniting to make this or that. Mm-hmm. So however that went.
I'm pretty sure Decker went on to do mostly TV work.
Enterprise, it looks like, and a lot of he did a lot of Tales from the Crypt as a writer.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. But yeah, the concept of all the bro douchebags getting in a van or getting in a bus and just drinking and being like, we're bros, and then they just crash and turn into zombies. And
they were
so perfect.
They were driving at maybe 25 miles an hour.
I know, that's like even better.
It's the most horrific car crash you've ever seen. It's fantastic. There's bodies and limbs everywhere. Like
the guy crawling with no legs.
Yeah. It's wonderful. It's very visceral. So for you, Mr. Joslin, this is definitely, it survives the pandemic. It's a thumbs up.
Oh yeah, definitely. Right. This is one of my favorite kinds of movies.
That and Japanese noise music driven abstract films.
Yeah, I'm a man of extremes. It's either super conventional and slow or just insane.
Yeah, you got to live on the edge, both sides. I get it. All right,
I have a question for the two who've spoken already. Just a quick question. When it comes to exploring tropes, and Adam, I didn't mean to exclude you. You're more welcome to weigh in as well.
No, I get it. Whatever.
This film definitely illustrates tropes that existed at the time in the genre, right? But it also played them through to the end, if that makes sense. Like, the douchebag kid, his best buddy still dies. He still gets the girl at the end. Does that kind of neuter the deconstruction a little bit, or how does that weigh in?
It's a good point. Do you know that they filmed the original? Do you know what the original ending to this movie was?
Was it the hero being infected?
No, so they blow up the house, and then the dog comes up and infests the girlfriend at the end. She gets a slug. That's how they shot it and ended it originally. Then they released it to audiences, and there was such a big downer, angry backlash that then they reshot him coming out and falling over instead and hinting. So I think if they had their way, they would have not let it end in the tropey way of the guy getting the girl. And in fact, he would have lost at the end. But it is a good question. It's the careful balance of the difference between that was the best example of that shitty Tarzan remake that no one saw, where Margot Robbie's like, I'm not going to be the damsel in distress, but then she just is for the movie, apparently. You can't just say and point out, we're doing the lazy thing and make up for it. And so you have to do something unique. So I feel like this movie is saying, we are doing the tropey thing, but then they'll go and do the thing of extremes of bus crashes with the creeps, or the fact that the moment he sees the girl, it's so dramatic music zoom in, and he's just immediately I am in love with her. And I feel like that is very jokey and just straight up saying this is really stupid, we're going to exaggerate it. So it is a careful line. It's is it a cheap out or not? But
and it's also worth noting that we always assume that the directors have complete authorial and control, and very rarely is that the case. So you said, the original ending was more wacky and probably more in line with what had come before, but there's always that, especially when you're working with such a low budget and you're looking for distribution and stuff. you kind of have to bow to the suits sometime, like, save the rest of the movie, kind of fuck up the ending a little, whatever.
Right.
And even
And also when you're working with low budgets, there's no telling like who just didn't show up one day, or if there was some weird conflict or whatever. So there's so many things in movies that are just, especially at this budget level, that are just utilitarian that we don't even think about. So
yeah. Well, other examples too of like the super exaggeration. They point out we're playing the alcoholic cop, but then it's like it's so played as like his dark past with like flashing back to just the murderer chopping up the girl, and even like the other cop coming and be like, don't you start thinking about that, like it's not your fault. Like it's so extreme that you are like, okay, I'm very forgiving because you're so aware of the alcoholic cop that when we cut to him, he's in his house like with the gas on, like so alcoholic, like my job is done, it's time to die.
Detective Cameron is like the sleeper like star of this movie.
Oh, absolutely.
He's who everyone remembers.
To give a response on your question, Clancy, I mean, that is the question of particularly looking at genre study is this truly a deconstruction? Does it take the trope and somehow flip it, reverse it, present it with realism that changes the presentation and the meaning? Or is it not a deconstruction? Or does it fall into the kind of like nebulous framing of reconstruction, which is, the next stage, which acknowledges sort of the criticism that comes from flipping a trope on its head, but then says, okay, we're gonna acknowledge that. We'll allow it. We'll keep the trope in place, but we're gonna present it in a way that feels fresh and new. So
sort of like a revelry. We're reveling.
Yeah, I mean.
In short, does it do the hokey pokey? Does it shake it all around?
I mean, an example I always use is like comic book movies are very clear delineations of like genre exploration. So like, we can look at like the comic book hero movies and of like maybe let's just say Batman, right? Like some of the early like Michael Keaton Batman films are very dark and brooding, and actually they sort of embody Batman. Then you have something like Batman Forever with Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones, which is sort of like very aware that comic book movies are silly and has Jim Carrey prancing around in skin tight, leotards and sucking people's brainwaves out, and it's like this goofy celebration of it. And then you get to the next stage, which is like Christopher Nolan, which is like, I acknowledge that the Batmobile has always been presented as this indestructible, vehicle of our hero, but I'm going to keep that trope. I'm just going to frame it as, it's a, military-grade weapons experimental car. And that's like how you keep the trope of the superhero's supercar and still sort of reframe it to make sense in the world. So...
Christopher Nolan was basically, okay, how do I tacitly endorse fascism? I've been Christopher Nolan. Good night. The Prestige.
But to keep the machine running, Isaac gives this a survival vote. So I guess it swings around to moi. This was actually my first viewing of the film. This is Night of the Creeps has been like on a list for me for a very long time, primarily because I've read so much about it and how it explores genre, and genre theory is a big kind of passion or interest of mine. But so I'd always been wanting to see this film, so this is a great excuse to finally watch it. And I agree with everything that's been said so far. The director seemed to be very much having his finger on the pulse of and screenwriter of kind of what was sort of the happening of the time with the culture, the zeitgeist, I guess you'd say, of film, enough to know to deconstruct it. And I think if we were to make a comparison again, I feel like comic book superhero movies are a dominant genre of today's culture, media culture. And I feel like within probably a 5 to 6 year window of having Iron Mans and Thors and every Marvel hero thrown at us. Most of the mans, it happened at the same time. There were directors who were handed the next installment who said, I'm gonna, it's Taika Waititi's version of Thor, and he clearly took that as, this sort of opportunity to deconstruct a lot of what we'd seen in the last half decade or so. I feel like there are directors and filmmakers who are very much in tune with what was going on, and Decker probably was very much in that same league with this film, because it does feel ahead of its time. It feels like it's mocking what's happening at that moment in the 80s, and very succinctly. I really enjoyed this film. I liked the tone. I liked everything it did. I liked Tom Atkins 110%. It's always Miller time, as far as I'm concerned.
Thrill me.
Thrill me. But even there was an aspect. There's an interesting balance in this film where I thought there were moments where it was genuinely had some nice, creepy, scary moments, and then it also had some really silly moments. That's the
key of horror comedy.
I agree.
The horror straight.
It's very much Evil Dead 2. It's very much Sam Raimi's work of there's some unsettling, gore, creepy scare moments, and there's also some outlandish, silly moments, and it strikes that balance. The recording from his friend that he finds when he says, "I'm going to go down to the furnace room. I believe I'm infected." I found that whole scene incredibly unsettling, and that could have been from any horror movie from the same era, and yet at the same time,
and even him going down there and finding the body, he failed at trying to get it out of him, kind of thing. It's jeez.
But then at the same time, you have the frat boys who are just absolute send-ups of fraternity brothers and how silly they are, and even the opening and closing of this film with the aliens who accidentally let the sample go is somewhat.
Oh goddamn! We didn't even mention the aliens. I was immediately laughing. It comes around the corner, and I was just like, "God damn it!"
I love that they're completely naked, but they're using
butts.
and they're using high-tech weaponry, but they haven't developed clothes.
They look like Station from.
And their faces don't move, so they're just like. The entire time.
But even at the end, there's sort of this ineptitude. It has this fun. I know they didn't get the ending of the dog infecting the girlfriend, but they do still have a little bit of a silly twist.
Well, it was their way of fixing it. It's the same. The other talk was like, "Ooh, can you add? We'll give you budget to add more." So they went and added the scene in the shed too.
It's balance.
It's not like they really. Someone else took over for that ending. I'm sure they're like, well, how else? What other fun way could we do it? And so they at least went that.
However,
way.
They could let the chips get pushed into the middle of the table, but the brain slugs sneak their way into the local cemetery at the end of the film. But then, of course, we see the aliens return, slamming their searchlight on every grave they can find.
What was in the basement, by the way? Did we set up what the experiment was in the basement?
There's a bunch of brains in there, a bunch of cadavers.
Oh, that's right. Okay, I kept trying to remember what the hell she had, and it was that's right, because she was on the steps carrying them, right? Okay.
It's she's this biology student, and she's like, you mind if I keep my jar of brains in the sorority basement?
I knew it was body parts, I just couldn't remember specifically which ones. It was like,
and the best part is the girl's like, whatever, Debbie, nerd. Just don't get your brain juice on the carpet, freak.
I love the part where the guy from City Slickers, he's dead. He's an animated corpse. And the cop's just like, see you next week. He just walks by him. Shuffling down the hallway.
Wait, the guy from City Slickers?
The mousy looking guy he was the med student who gets infected at the beginning. He's the first guy to die.
David Paymer?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
He was in City Slickers? Oh, fuck that guy. Yeah. I'm trying to describe him without being racist.
No, he's on IMDb.
I saw him on the IMDb.
I was about to be
he's
burn the witch, man. He just knows.
He's one of those that guy actors.
He
that
is.
You see
and
in
David
everything.
Paymer's been in a ton of stuff. One of the most bizarre films he's ever been in. He's never been a star, but he was actually the lead actor in the film Carpool, which is co-starred by Tom Arnold.
What?
So if you want to watch a film about a guy who gets hijacked with a bunch of kids in his
and is
minivan,
forced to work with Tom Arnold.
and is forced to, Tom Arnold hijacks him. It's a bizarre, ridiculous film, but it's called Carpool. And David Paymer is the star for the only film he's ever been the lead role.
We're not gonna watch Carpool.
Guess what, assholes? That's our next series. It's 19 episodes of us dissecting Carpool, starring David Paymer and Tom Arnold. Get ready.
It's just like weird hijacking buddy movies. So it's Nothing to Lose with Tim Robbins.
It's Nothing to Lose, just minus the humor, and then add a bunch of kids.
Oh, great!
That's it. Totally worth watching.
Back to Night of the Creeps, Boyd. It sounds like it's a
resounding thumbs up. This film survives. This film is definitely probably in a favorite 80s clump for me as well. Mm-hmm. Like there was just a lot of win in this film. At how aware it was of just what it was and how it presented itself. I also thought it was really interesting that the co-star of the lead actor, the friend, the roommate,
the wheelchair friend.
Yeah, who's kind of the quippy, like the sardonic humor of the film, but like he has a disability, and it never became an aspect of the plot other than like one time where he called a person out for it. Mm. I was like, this film's weirdly progressive. Like, so I thought that was interesting.
Is this the same 80s where the government laughed off the AIDS crisis?
Yeah, like it felt weird, but at the same time, the whole film I thought from beginning to end was enjoyable. It was a movie that I thought too. You could feel the budgetary constraints in a very blurred sense on the outside, but the way that it's presented and handled, it was like being handed a small budget and doing exactly everything you could to milk everything out of it, to play it in the right way, where it felt like, oh, you did it. You either made fun of the fact you didn't have a lot of money, or you got a lot out of the small amount of money you had. So this was a commendable movie in that regard.
And that follows with the directors he name checks with his characters, like James Cameron, John Landis, and Sam Raimi all did the same shit. They went out and made their own super low budget movies, and that became huge hits because they knew how to stretch a dollar.
Right. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this film survives for me, hands down. I'll kick it back to Mr. Bundy, Clancy, to kind of sum everything up and give your final vote. Clancy, sure. Take us home, buddy.
This was a fun revisit. I swear I'm not doing this for effect, but I'm probably going to have to thumbs down it just because of...
You son of a bitch.
Just, like, by the sword, though, like, as a film, yes, it was super enjoyable and it was fun to revisit, but as a pandemic movie, it's an invasion movie. I had remembered it differently, and it kind of fitted different in my brain. Aspects.
Hey, when you play Plague Inc., parasites are an option on the diseases.
I mean, that could be a problem with my rubric in my head. I mean, I'm not discounting.
Yeah, I think you're playing by completely different rules than the rest of us, buddy.
I can kind of see what you're saying.
You're a wild card.
I mean, kind of see what you're saying.
Badge and your gun on my desk.
There's a line between a pandemic and an infestation, is what I'm saying. And this is clearly, I mean, in Slither, the movie that was like basically an ideological recreation of this one, there's a lot more pandemic-style aspects of it. Like, people are infected with it. People biologically change, aside from just... But,
Clancy, isn't a pandemic really just the infestations we had inside of us all along?
Yeah, I mean, again, that's... So I'm a rules guy, and I'm going to rule this as an invasion infestation movie, as opposed to...
Whatever, man. I'd crawl over 10 good slithers to get to one Night of the Creeps.
I gotcha. Just... there's aspects in Slither where, like, when you get infected and you somehow survive, you still have lingering side effects left over. There's a disease that biologically changes your makeup as opposed to just reanimating your dead body.
How's becoming a zombie not a change to your biological makeup?
Reanimating.
I can see what you're saying, Clancy, and I think that would be a whole another episode discussion of, like, where do we draw the lines in terms of the genre? How do we define a space invasion film different from a viral film or a pandemic film. So I think there's an argument to be said that this
And to be
doesn't.
honest, I submitted
fit.
this film knowing this was going to be something I was going to get in my craw. So that was the whole point of it, was for me to bring us
Yeah,
some
well, no one else
craw.
cares, Clancy. Good job.
Yeah, clean out your craw, brah.
I still love the movie, and that's my final thoughts on it.
All right, well, you're wrong.
I do like celebrating movies by I don't know, guys like, I'm looking through the director's oeuvre, and he's a journeyman filmmaker. He writes a bunch of shit. He directs a few things. He did RoboCop 3, and then kind of a break for a while for him.
Oh, yeah, he did RoboCop 3.
Yeah, watch Isaac.
Okay, thumbs down. This movie's infected.
See what I mean?
Fuck everyone.
Yeah. So, I enjoy
Fucking hacking Ed 209 with a speak and spill. Fuck off.
he made that.
PG-13 RoboCop.
He
only
made
wrote
that
it.
mistake after this film. So.
Well, he can blow it out his ass. Is what he can do.
And there we
Fucking
see how quickly
RoboCop
Isaac's loyalties can shift.
All right, wrap it up, boys. Let's get this out. Just get this over with. RoboCop fucking 3.
Well, go ahead, Clancy. Tell us what else he did to anger Isaac.
That was it. I mean, he did RoboCop 3.
Great.
That was basically the last. And then he wrote the new Predator movie with Shane Black. So
Right.
watch that and let us know, Isaac.
Yeah. All right. Well, it sounds like other than Clancy's own self-destruction vote, this was a resounding survival through the pandemic. A real fun film that is very aware of the genre it's aping, and yet still kind of hits a lot of the beats of that genre. So if you have not seen it yet, definitely check it out. And then, of course, let us know what you think and how right or wrong we were as well. Thank you very much for tuning in to this episode of the PandemFlick Vodcast. Once again, a reminder that this is also a podcast, so if you're not into the whole seeing our face thing, you can just listen along at home by finding us on iTunes. I want to thank our panel of hosts for weighing in on today's film. Thank you guys for coming on the show again.
Of course.
And we will see you on the next episode. Anyone have the list handy, what we're talking about next?
No.
Give me.
I think it's blindness.
Is it?
Let me.
It's one of your movies, boy.
I think it's blindness.
Yeah.
Calling it.
God damn it! Where'd my?
I got it. I took a picture. It's blindness. Blindness and
It is.
children of
That's
men
what I
and the
said.
crazies.
Yes.
Okay, well, whoa. Don't give him too much.
I'll beat that out. Don't worry.
Jesus
All right.
You want to
Christ.
give him the next one? Okay.
Yeah.
The next film we'll be talking about is Blindness, starring Julianne Moore.
I'm sorry, that was crazy. It's just the children are blind. It's all fine.
So be sure to tune in. We are dropping new episodes every Tuesday. And, of course, do all those YouTube-y things. Smash that like and subscribe button and whatever to keep up to date with all our new episodes coming out. Thank you once again for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the next episode. Until then, stay healthy, stay safe,
And we'll see you in hell.
stay alert. Thanks, folks. See you on the next one.